second round of presentations this afternoon. My name is Axel Fischer. I do a little bit of the PR work for the EcoPaperLoop project. Later I will give a presentation as well, and I will guide you through this afternoon. And our first speaker is a very prominent speaker. She's the head of the Pulp and Paper Institute in Ljubljana, but she's not a natural grown paper plant. She has a degree in social sciences, but a very strong addiction to technology and some experience in the automotive industry. And now she's the head, as I said, of the Pulp and Paper Institute in Ljubljana, and she will give us a presentation now. Ms. Mateja Mešl about recommendations for regulatory framework, because this is one of the outcomes of the EcoPaperLoop project. You see here our first roll-up poster. That was what we planned when we set up this EcoPaperLoop project, to make a roadmap for paper recycling strategies in Europe, to enhance the awareness, improve the collection, improve the design of packaging and printed products. We have done very little in this field, I think. Improve recyclability, yeah. But the roadmap, that's something very important. Suggestions for politics in the future. How should politics all over Europe deal with what we found out in the course of this project? Ms. Mešl, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Axel, and good afternoon, everybody, also from my side. I'm starting the afternoon session, and I hope this summary of the roadmap and recommendations that we developed through the EcoPaperLoop project will warm us for the next presentations and more precise results. I'm coming from the Pulp and Paper Institute of Ljubljana, Slovenia, as mentioned already, and what Axel didn't mention is that I'm a newcomer. That's been my first year at the Institute, and I joined the EcoPaperLoop somewhere in the middle of the implementation. We were responsible for the work package 6 in the project, 6 out of 6, and we targeted our work to develop a roadmap to translate the research into a policy guidelines, meaning that what I will present today is not on what we did and how we worked, but really a summary of what we learned and what we achieved during the project from the point of view of legislation. And we try to develop, in consensus with different stakeholders, guidelines for common strategy and framework on paper recycling loop to reach the ambitious targets set up now with the new package in discussion, and of course high quality raw material for the industry. I will briefly present the process that we went through. As I said, the recommendations were discussed with stakeholders and were reached at a very high level of consensus. And then I'll present the key messages that we developed together. Within the work package, we developed quite a comprehensive overview of the legislative requirements with regard to paper recycling. I won't go into details with this because this will be uploaded and available as a document of the project, and you can see all the outcomes in the document later on. And what we did, and represents really a very important input to the conclusions, is also comparative study on implementation of the waste legislation in the countries of the Central European region or the project partners countries. The main conclusions here we heard already in the morning session. There are great differences in the implementation between different countries, and we reached, in average, a very strong results already and reached the target set for the legislation, but the differences are major and a very strong messages appears from there. As the discussion point, or the starting point for the discussion with the stakeholders, we developed kind of the strategic basic statements which came out of the community strategic objectives, meaning especially EU circular economy targets, and also the new legislative proposals that are just being discussed, and we heard a lot about this morning already. We had a very good and comprehensive presentation of the circular economy from our colleague Beata from the Polish Ministry of Environment, and of course the industry perspective from our colleague Ulrich from CEPI. The CEPI roadmap to 2050 and the position paper on new legislative proposals were important starting points here. And I really don't want to go into details because the presentations were very good and focused, and we heard all about this already. Maybe a little bit more on the consultation process. As Graziano already presented this morning, we had a lot of stakeholder discussions, dialogues, seminars, presentations all around the Central European region. But in addition to that, what was an important input to our conclusions were the answers that we got from the common questionnaire. We developed a questionnaire for all different or key stakeholders involved in the paper loop, meaning paper and converters, industry, authorities, national, regional, also civil society, waste management, and research, of course. Altogether, we were asking them, the stakeholders, for their opinion on paper recycling policy and goals that are accepted as a common goals from the European Union and national states, about their opinion on the legislation and the implementation of the legislation in different environments, and also, of course, the most importantly, the proposals for new policy targets, objectives, and legislation on the field. We've got 113 answers from all countries, partners countries, plus Austria, and the answers we've got were almost equally shared between the different stakeholders, from producers to the waste management and authorities. I'd like also to mention two international brainstorming sessions that we had during the project. One was in Ljubljana in February 2000 this year, and another one in Sopron in Hungary. And those sessions were really very important for the final conclusions, since all the relevant different stakeholders appeared, and we were discussing the key issues that were already determined for the more efficient recycling, meaning recyclability, collection strategies, public awareness, and legislation as such. Among the stakeholders' dialogues, which, as I said, were organized in all different countries of the partnership, maybe I would like to share with you experience from Slovenia. We had two special sessions or dialogues with the stakeholders, including national, regional authorities, producers, waste management companies, and civil society. And our learning here is that even though that triangle and the potential conflicting objectives among key stakeholders, as Harald pointed out this morning, really exist, and this is the challenge for the future, we believe that it is a good starting point, because obviously, at least in our case, the awareness on the importance of searching for the compromise in those conflicting objectives is already there. The partners, the stakeholders from different positions came to discussions. They were open and they were aware of the challenges in front of us. But they also pointed out some very important weaknesses or further challenges especially with regard to municipal waste streams being, in general opinion, really the key for the more efficient recycling. Those are really the recommendations or the guidelines, the key points that we are setting in our roadmap. It looks like we are repeating ourselves all the time, because it's almost the same as we heard this morning from CEPI, from the Polish government, and also from our colleagues explaining or presenting individual work package results. But I think this is a good sign, because that seems a very good and promising start of the discussion on the new legislative proposals, the package that's coming now, because it's like we are really heading in the same direction. The main points that we were listening to this morning and the conclusions from the project are more or less the same. There are two more general guidelines or proposals which are targeting the objectives and the focus of the future policy to be, and then 4 more specific dealing with the key topics or fields of interest in paper for recycling loop. Recommendation number 1, the stakeholders involved in all the discussions pointed out very, very strongly and uniform statement that the policy regarding paper recycling needs more focus, prioritizing recycling and sustainability. We heard that this morning from the Polish position paper as well. Sustainability is the key. It's not the recycling rate only, but it's really the question of the quality of paper for recycling, which we need to address much better. You've seen the chart already. It's very known. We are using it everywhere, and Ulrich presented it already today. And the statement here could be that European Union is really reaching the limits regarding paper recycling rates. We heard we reached the average of over 70%, and theoretically there is a statement that about 20% of the paper is not collectible or recyclable. So basically we are almost there. But at the same time, the quality of paper for recycling is decreasing. And the main challenge definitely lies in here. New consumption patterns, we've seen the graph of decrease of the graphic paper being the best recyclable paper, and at the same time the increase of the paper that is more difficult for recycling, meaning especially multifunctional and multi-material packaging is what we should think about. And that's why the main message we would like to pose to the policies, being European, national, regional, is that yes, we support ambitious targets. We need ambitious targets for the development. That's in general true, but we need a more comprehensive approach to the policy design and implementation, with a special focus on the quality of paper for recycling, and thus focusing on the key preconditions for that, being eco-design, better collection, and better sorting. The second recommendation applies to the, is a message to the policy designers on the basic principle that needs to be considered when designing new legislation. We don't want new bans. That was very strong message from all the discussions around the stakeholders. There is room for improvement, yes. A lot of obstacles and weaknesses were identified also with the European Commission, with the new proposal. There is a lot of targeted action proposed already, but what we definitely don't want is new bans or expand of legislation, which could really become a barrier for development. We don't want overregulation. And at the same time, the message that appears here is education, promotion, and stimulation of all actors in the value chain is much more important and could be much more efficient than just new legislative requirements. What we claim here is that recycling is already adequately placed in the waste hierarchy, but what are the obstacles in this case are more clear definitions. Recycling definition is too vague. A lot of definitions and standards are open for different interpretations. And this was also recognized as one of the problems when looking at the differences between different countries and the implementation of legislation around Europe, because the interpretation, understanding, and traceability of the legislation is not as it should be. As I said already, legislation is lacking comprehensiveness. More emphasis should be put on the closed loop recycling management and with much more clear responsibilities of all actors involved. Secondly, when it comes to the legislation and the new package in discussion, the statement is that the priority should be ensuring equal implementation of the existing legislation in all countries and to reach higher consistency between European, national, and regional regulation. That should be a very priority. A lot of examples were heard during the discussions on the conflicting translation of the European legislation into national ones, and therefore this was put in such a high priority. And finally, as I said, a very strong focus should be put on investment in promotion and education, and thus rising awareness on the recyclability issues. With all the discussions, it was proved again that the basic awareness on the importance of recycling is achieved. The statement that we in paper industry don't like to hear a lot, that we need to recycle to save the trees, was promoted a lot and it's accepted among the population, but much less awareness and knowledge exists on the recyclability issues. And this is something that we need to increase. So the basic recommendations here would be to improve the general knowledge on the whole paper loop and to promote much better the key preconditions for the quality of paper for recycling. A more life cycle thinking that was also mentioned today already is needed, promoting sustainability targets, not only quantitative targets on recycling rates, and among all actors. And last but not least, very important message, we don't need more punishment for the producers and actors in the paper loop. What we need is more stimulation. And that's why the stakeholders pointed out a lot on the demand side policy measures, meaning incentives for the population in collecting papers, meaning incentives for innovation in recycling, and support for technological development, as well as incentives or stimulating the market development initiatives that are already in place in European legislation. In the third recommendation, we are pointing out the collection strategies. It was mentioned several times this morning. This is the key for more efficient recycling. And Harald told us a lot about this, so I won't go into details with the numbers and the key challenges. but what we would like to pass to the policymaker is that we need more efficient collection systems, but recognizing that there is no one recipe. Uniform collection strategies don't exist and they cannot exist. There are differences, and Harriet explained that very good previously, and there are different options, and there is no direct correlation with a particular collection strategy or system and the efficiency. It's all in the implementation. But nevertheless, EU legislation should lay out the basis for the common orientation, meaning no for commingled collection. We need more pure streams, and we need efficient sorting and traceability and higher traceability, meaning that we need to promote separate collection and more investment in awareness raising and guidance for all actors in the value chain. And of course, the third recommendation is related to the producer's responsibility. It is suggested to strengthen the requirements in relation to producers' in eco-design to better inform and guide consumers to proper collection. In the fourth recommendation, the topic is eco-design and recyclability. We use the saying which explains it all, use product design to educate on the environment. And the message from the stakeholders here is that the policies now are too much focused on the waste stage of the paper life cycle, and that eco-design is not promoted enough. We need to strengthen that. And for that, we need general rules on eco-design at the EU level, and we also need more stimulations and recommendations for the product designers and producers in that field. Determination of recyclability, that is a specific topic that was really outlined, and we'll hear more about this in the afternoon. We need evaluation methods and criteria to define recyclability. And this recyclability test should represent the umbrella and link to different standards that already exist on the field in order to be able to orient the producers to eco-design, to better design the products for the recyclability issues. One more important message was passed here, and I believe it was also, it's also a part of the CEPI position paper. It's about extended producers' responsibility, which is already in place with quite different requirements or different level in different countries. But what we would like to communicate here is that, yes, we need extended producers' responsibility and more exact requirements for that, but we need to take care about not putting too much pressure on the producers on the topics that they don't really have a control of, because this could be counterproductive if put in that way. Green public procurement was found as a special important topic as well. We suggest to enforce the use of recyclability criteria in green public procurement, stating that for now the recycling, the content of the recycled fiber in the product is stressed too much. What we need really is the recyclability criteria, and promote, involve recyclability criteria in the green public procurement requirements. GPP is important tool to stimulate recycling. We saw the target in the new legislation proposal, 50% of the GPP. We heard also that there is a fear of the pressure on the national budgets. But again, when stimulating or promoting GPP further on, we need to think about having very defined criteria, and again, we need to ensure that sustainability is the basis for the GPP requirements again. What was really discussed here and stressed as very important is also that that field will require even more investment in education promotion, especially when it comes to education of the civil staff working in the GPP, because the understanding or the knowledge on the recyclability issues here was found at very low level. Further on, we think that GPP should be an obligation for the public sector and should be even strongly promoted, but at the same time we should trigger to promote the criteria used in GPP also in the private sector and promote this as a common practice all over the place in purchasing the products. And finally, recommendation number 6 is a topic which was very hot about a year ago. We all remember the discussion of the change of end-of-waste directive, which was gladly stopped at the European Parliament also with a lot of thanks to CEPI, I believe. I'm a newcomer, I said, but I think that was the case because we think that this was cause environmental and economic consequences, and that we need to think when discussing the end-of-waste directive again on sustainability in order to maintain the quality paper for recycling in Europe. I believe the last number in relation to export of paper for recycling is 50% of all recycled products in Europe, and it's quite stable since 2009 and 10 on, but still it represents quite an amount which we don't want to lose, and we would like to see the end-of-waste directive being discussed through the sustainability point of view. Further on, we agreed that we need strict implementation of the waste shipment regulation, which in a way is a directive or regulation that is blocking or safeguarding the export of paper for recycling, but still more practical supervision is needed here, more inspection and monitoring. And the paper and packaging waste should be traceable all along until recycling and processing. Basically, this is it. The last slide is missing. I don't know what happened, but anyway, those are the messages and recommendations that came out of the EcoPaperLoop project. Thank you very much.
So thank you for your attention. Wait. I see hundreds of questions here in the faces of Mr. Ono's side. Now we split the microphones, I think. I take the other one. Take this one. One should be working.
Only one question. You mentioned producer responsibility to increase this. What do you think? Where are the producers? What kind of producers you're thinking about? Paper producers?
Paper producers, yeah.
So the paper mills themselves?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And what about the converters? Those who use paper for packaging, for...
Yeah, it's, as we said, that eco-design is a trade-off of very different requirements for the final product that is to be packed. So the packers are really the ones who are deciding on the packaging material. So it would be uneven really to put all the pressure on the paper producer in the chain. That's what we meant. that the responsibility for the recyclability should be evenly spread across the value chain according to the real impact or influence that each stakeholder has to the recycling of the paper.
And another question? I have one. You talked about the green public procurement to be transferred a little bit into the private sector. When you see the private industry, you see a lot of self-commitments in terms of sustainability. Many companies have their sustainability reports. What do you think about how can they improve this type of green public procurement?
What was meant was really to use the basic not rules, but principles as in green public procurement like recyclability, also in the private sector.